Original characters, we all have them and we all love them as they basically represent us online or sometimes our likes and dislikes. And MLP is no stranger to this, but what happens when an OC becomes more than a reference and they actually become characters? Hello everyone, my name is Sugarflake and today let's explore the wonderful and weird world of OCs in MLP, from the ones we all know about to the infamous and even some that we didn't expect to be OCs. So let's begin. Let's begin with the first OC that ever appeared in Mandopony, this one being Holydash. Holydash is a female unicorn with a light pink coat, a yellow, blue and purple mane, and a cure mark which represents a strawberry. She first appeared in Friendship is Magic Part 2 as part of the group of ponies who greet Princess Alessia into Ponyville. But her first real appearance was in Swarm of the Century, but while nowadays we know her as Holydash, back then we only knew her as Chatty School Teacher, as this was how she was called in the Game Love game. But this was until April 18, 2011, where we finally got to know who Holydash truly was. Holydash was the OC of the series animator Holly Gimbranch, and the name Holydash was an actual nickname some of her co-workers gave her, and this was because of her colorful hair. And that would have been where the story of Holydash ended, but it wasn't. She became a very popular character back in the day, and I do mean popular, as Holydash wasn't only adored by fans, but she's also one of the most merchandised OCs ever in MLP, with her having brushables, TCG cards, a mini pony, and of course the iconic and amazing Olifactory plush, that sadly had a very unexpected fate, as Hasbro would send a cease and desist towards Olifactory for quote, using an unauthorized character, which confused a lot of fans back in the day, but this was until January 2012, where some fans asked Holly why Holydash wasn't in the show more often, which Gimbranch stated. The character isn't in the show more often mostly because she wasn't supposed to be there in the first place, something that at the time a lot of fans didn't really understand, but this was referring to the no OC rule Hasbro had at the time, a rule that would later get changed to no fan character shall ever appear in any official MLP media. A rule that would somewhat continue for the entirety of the show. But despite this rule, this didn't stop other members of the staff from putting on their own OCs in the show, just like Midnight Strike. Midnight Strike is a black Pegasus mare with a black mane and tail with dark yellow accents and a cure mark which represents a storm cloud with a thunder coming out of it. Midnight Strike only appeared in one episode, this one being Wonderbolt's Academy, where she was one of the trainees in the background. And she was designed by the show's character designer Charmaine Verhagen. And that's really it. She didn't appear in any other episode after her initial appearance, but surprisingly she was a small fan favorite back in the day, inspiring fans to do fan art, custom plushies, and even making appearances in all MLP fan videos.
Checking her out, making sure I'm okay. You guys want some water or something?
Nope, thanks. We'll be alright.
Whoops, sorry about that.
And if I'm honest, I don't know why she was so popular, but maybe it had to do with her color palette. But despite this, she actually would make one final appearance in MLP media, but not in the show, or comics, or even in the books, but rather as a collection prize in the Game Love game. But that's it. Midnight Strike wouldn't stay as a fan favorite for long, and she would slowly fade into obscurity in the years to come. But while Midnight Strike was a surprise fan favorite, our next two characters were fan favorites even before their appearances in the show, but that sadly nowadays have been tainted in drama and infamy, these ones being Cherry Gold and Mandopony. These two are both male earth ponies with a yellow coat, a brown mane and tail, and a cure mark which one represents cherries and the other one a mandolin. These two were background ponies that appear in the show and in the comics. Cherry Gold appeared in the episode Equestria Games and Mandopony appeared in Nightmare Rarity. Cherry Gold since his first appearance had a lot of fans talking about him, as this was because he had a lot of similarities to Mandopony, who was the original character of musician Andrew Stein. Someone who used to do MLP inspired music and that was one of the biggest pony musicians at the time. And back in the day, a lot of fans speculated if Cherry Gold was a reference in any way to Mandopony, which it wasn't, as on early February 2013, Sabrina Alberghetti stated that Mandopony would never make an appearance in the show, it's just not possible. And later the same week she said it could happen, but it had to be approved by Hasbro. And later on May 2014, Stein in response to Cherry Gold said, "That's not Mandopony, it's Cherry Pony. I got nothing." And later on the same year he said, "I can't confirm nor deny the identity of this pony," which left a lot of fans guessing if Cherry Gold was Mandopony or not. But finally in 2015, Jim Miller stated that we don't put fan OCs in the show and it's merely a coincidence as the colors of Cherry Gold were already used by other characters like Joe and Featherbanks, which yeah, it's the most likely case. Which wasn't the case for his comic version, as this one was undeniably Mandopony from his colors and more importantly, his cutie mark. And while we don't know who exactly put Mandopony in the comics, it was most likely Amy Memberson, which was the comic artist of the MLP comics at the time. And she was also the first to point out Mandopony's appearance in issue 7. And later, Stein reacted with this. "Oh my goodness, what? When? How? What? Oh, and what are we running from?" And with this, finally putting one of the most important and popular pony artists of the 2010s into an official piece of MLP media. But while at the time this was awesome, nowadays is not that much, as Stein has had a lot of controversies and disgusting practices over the years. And it's sad to know that this character will be forever engraved in the comics. And this isn't the only character that has a connection to Mandopony, as we also have Wildfire. Wildfire is a female Pegasus with a pale amber coat, a dark brown mane and tail, and a cure mark which represents a flaming tire. She first appeared in Candle Wedding Part 1, and she was the original character of Sabrina Alberghetti, who was the storyboard artist on the show, and later would go on to marry Andrew Stein. And you might be wondering how did she end up in the show, and that was actually very simple, as she storyboarded parts of the season 2 finale and decided to, why not, put her own OC in the show. And that's not all, as she was the second OC from the crew to appear in the show, predecessed by Holly Dash. And even parts of her character would get reused for other characters, such as Metaflower and Raindrops. And her cutie mark will later be reused for Harping Turn. But what I find more interesting is that Wildfire is the second OC to have a proper story in the show and in the comics. Wildfire was born in Cloudsdale, and when she was a small filly she had a fascination with speed, and later she would use that determination to become a player for the Canterlot's Academy polo team, and later she would finally become a Wonderbolt. And that was Wildfire's story, which I found very cool and interesting that they would give an OC a proper story in universe, and it wasn't the only time, but that comes later. But now let's move on to two characters that broke the rule of no fan OCs in the show, but for a good reason, these ones being Stellar Eclipse and Angel Wings. Stellar Eclipse and Angel Wings were two background ponies that appear in 2 episodes, these ones being Tradia and Top Bolt. One is a male Pegasus with a light brown coat, a black and purple striped mane and tail, and a cure mark which represents a sun symbol surrounded by a pink circle with 8 triangles. And the other one being a female Pegasus with a greyish cream coat, a light brown mane with a red stripe and a bright red bow, and a cure mark which represents a heart with the wings. What makes these two really special is that they are the first fan OCs to properly appear in the show, and this was thanks to the Make-A-Wish Foundation, who helped Lex and Sylvian to play their own characters in the show. And this was because Sylvian has a spiral muscular atrophy type 3 and Lex has a congenital heart disease with a connective tissue disorder. But something that we all wonder was, where are they nowadays? Well, for Sylvian, he's still alive and makes live streams on Twitch, and while he isn't in the MLP community anymore, he left a big impact with his character, as Stellar Eclipse was one of the few disabled characters in the show. And as for Lex Hill, well, after her initial role playing Angel Wings, a few days later she got invited to be a guest of honor at Ponyville Cider Fest 2016, which was hosted in Milwaukee, as well as coming out as non-binary. So how is Lex doing nowadays? Well, for that we don't know, as her last activity online was on her Twitter account on November 14, 2020. But in here we see that Lex continued to like MLP and kept a lot of souvenirs from her time in the show, and while we don't know how they're doing nowadays, hopefully they're doing good and well. But now let's move on to a character that began just like any other OC, this one being Peachy. Peachy is a female unicorn that has a pale lime coat, a tan yellow and light amber mane and tail, and a cure mark which represents a half peach with a pit. Peachy first appeared in the episode Pinky Pride as a sales pony, and later she would make another appearance in On Your Marks as one of the painters in the background. Peachy was the OC of, at the time, Studios B animator Erica Pitt, and she had an origin which was very similar to most of our OCs back in the day, as Peachy and other OCs from the crew like Holidash, Wildfire and Snowdrop were made by recoloring stock builds of characters, and they were told this. Okay everyone, I know that everyone is so excited for this new pony show, but please do not put your OC in the show as a background character, okay? Erica wanted her OC to originally be green, but someone told her that green doesn't sell and that she should change it, something that I don't agree with. While yeah, it's a lot more difficult to make a good green pony OC, it's not impossible, as there's been and are people who have great green pony OCs. But even with this small criticism, she did make some changes to her OC, and on early August 2011, Peachy would finally be revealed. And on October 2011, Mrs. Pitt would finally describe her OC to the world. She said that she was a lighter green pony with brown and yellow hair, with black rimmed glasses, with legs slightly longer than the average pony, and looking sassy. And with this, creating the Peachy we saw in the show. But while Peachy wasn't that much of a fan favorite, our next character not only was, but became a living meme among the community, this character being Whoa Nelly. Whoa Nelly is the name of a female unicorn which has a turquoise coat, a bright lime green mane and tail, and a kurmak which represents her own face inside of a white star surrounded by 5 smaller orange stars. Whoa Nelly first appeared as a joke photo in a locker in the episode Thanks for the Memories, and later she would make a full-on appearance in the episode Canterlot Boutique, where she asked if there was a sale on the princess's dresses. Whoa Nelly was a character that had a lot of speculation surrounding her since her first appearance, from her design to her name and even why she appeared in some photos in the background and in the newspaper, which sparked theories that potentially she was a retired movie star from Applewood. And even Jim Miller referencing Nelly in the premiere of Thanks for the Memories as he tweeted "Whoa Nelly" while the episode was airing, which just fueled more speculation from fans back in the day. And while you might expect Whoa Nelly to be just a one-off joke character, that wasn't the case, as she was the OC of the show's character designer Charmine Verhagen, and Nelly was the 7th pony she designed. And that's not all, as she was also behind the inclusion and design of the other crew's OCs, like Holidash, Wildfire, Midnight Strike, Peachy Pit, and Stellar Eclipse, as well as being behind the creation of Slendermane. Whoa Nelly's origin began as an inside joke among the animators of the staff, as she was referred to as the Love Yourself pony, and her inclusion on the show was at the whims of Charmine Verhagen and fellow character designers Cora Koshika and Rebecca Tart. Although they originally expected Hasbro to disapprove of her inclusion in the show, they didn't. And with this, the one simple joke among staff became one of the most memorable and iconic characters in the later seasons. And while Whoa Nelly became a fanfare because of her unique and charming design, our next character was created by a fan itself, this one being Sappho. Sappho was a female earth pony with an olive green coat, a long black mane and tail, and a kurmak which represents 2 female gender symbols intertwined with each other. Sappho only made one appearance in the entirety of G4, and that was on Friends Forever issue 16, as a disguise used by Prancy Drew. and she was the OC of Jen Blake, who was an artist that helped draw some pieces of artwork and covers for the comics. And thanks to this, she got the opportunity to add her own OC into the comics. And as a fun fact, the name Sappho is most likely a reference to Sappho of Lesbos, who is considered as an important symbol of lesbian relationships. And this is important because Sappho has been portrayed in many artworks in a relationship with Rarity, which I find incredibly interesting, as this one is the second lesbian relationship Rarity has been in G4, with the other one being Jack in Equestria Girls. But that's it, and shockingly we know more about Jen's OC than her, and despite her DeviantArt still being up even to this day, she hasn't been active since 2016, and the things we do know about who she was that she was a model at some point, and that probably began as a fan of the show who later got brought onto the team of artists in IDW. And despite her account being inactive for 9 years at this point, I highly recommend you guys go check her art out, as it's very high quality and honestly it's quite amazing. And hopefully she's doing well all these years later. But now let's move on to two OCs that not only were featured in the show, but became two important characters for the story of Quibblepens, these ones being Clear Sky and Windsprint. Clear Sky and Windsprint are a unicorn mare and a Pegasus filly, Clear Sky being a single mother and Quibblepens' girlfriend, and Windsprint being her daughter, who is a big fan of sports. They both appear in just one episode, this one being Common Ground, and at first you might be saying, what are these two doing here? But believe it or not, these two are OCs of their voice actors, Meredith Salanger and Alice Oswald, as they had the liberty to choose what kind of ponies they wanted to be, their color schemes, and even their designs, which is something that can't be said for other characters that were directly based on their voice actors, like Cheese Sandwich and Songbird Serenade. And a cool but weird detail is that the design team referenced actual photos of the two of them to try and capture their likeness in pony form. Specifically with Alice, with them even including her freckles on Windsprint's design, which is pretty neat. And as a whole, I find these two incredibly interesting, as again, while not being OCs in the traditional sense, I love how these two weren't merely cameos or references of their voice actors, but rather actual characters that had their own story in the show. But we still have two more OCs, but ones that surpass being background ponies or references, but full-on fleshed out characters, these ones being Bittersweet and Leadwing. Bittersweet and Leadwing are two background ponies, one being a female unicorn with a lime green coat, a gold mane and tail, and a cure mark which represents a speech bubble with a heart inside it. And the other one being an earth pony that has a blue coat, deep blue mane and tail, and a cure mark which represents a pencil with bat wings. These two appear both in the show and in the comics, and they were the original characters of IDW's writers Katie Cooks and Andy Price. And what I find very interesting about these two is that they were the most prevalent OCs in the entirety of G4, with their story beginning on February 16, 2016, when they were previewed in a test animation that was shown at PonyCon New York City. And a few months later they would get their first appearances in the show, these ones being in Princess Spike, but their first real appearances weren't in the show, but rather in the comics, as their appearances in the comics not only predecessed their appearances in the show, but they also gave them the most development out of all the OCs in this video, specifically with Bittersweet. Bittersweet was born in Detroit, and from a young age she had a fascination for art and her community, something that would later inspire her to pursue politics, and she would study none other than Canterlot Academy. And after that she would meet Leadwing, who ironically was also from Detroit and also was into politics and art. Together they would travel all across Equestria, from Applewood to Ponyville, and finally representing Detroit on Canterlot. Other things that we know about them is that they are very good event organizers, that they love Spike's comics, and that they are close friends and big fans of the princesses, especially Luna. But that was Bittersweet's and Leadwing's story in the comics, which was incredibly interesting, as what should have been just another OC or background character became a part of the MOP universe, which is something that I can say for all the characters in this video. Some of them became full-on characters, and others had interesting origins, and even some became fan favorites, even if it was only for the memes or Again, why are you a fan favorite? Like, really, why? But what do you guys think? Did you know any of these characters, and do you have an OC of your own? Leave it down in the comments. And as always, remember to like the video if you enjoyed it and consider subscribing for more MLP videos like this one. And remember to take care guys, and I'll see you in the next video.